I've been kind of fanboying all day looking at the release trailer for Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, this is a huge DLC, and it is going into a huge, already completed game. Elden Ring launched a couple of years ago at this point, so they, took their time with this DLC, but it's looking to be a huge expansion of the world and something really, really special. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of the From Software games. I'm a big fan of things like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne. So there are a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about on this channel relating to those topics. But today I wanted to talk about why the whole DLC situation around Elden Ring matters so much. Why is this a big deal? Well, first off, we have been getting told in the games industry now, especially in the West, for years through the actions, at the very least, the actions, and sometimes the words too, things like pride and accomplishment from companies like EA, from these Western game development companies, that essentially all that matters is money, and all that matters is putting out the least amount possible for the biggest possible reward. Now look, there are certainly games that I enjoy that have games as a service elements. I've said before that I play Fortnite from time to time. I even have a Fortnite creator code if you want to support the channel. That's DJAY123. And I think that they are actually, pretty good about their service elements. It's a free game. If you want to buy some stuff, you can. If you don't, you could play every single season and enjoy the game. But I do think that a lot of problems have kind of, worked their way into Western cultures with gaming. There's a lot of censorship. There's a lot of tampering with art. There's a lot of arguing about what approach is best. And the approach that usually is taken is not one that's pro-player. It's not one that is pro-content or trying to give you the best bang for your buck. Something that's really cool about Elden Ring, the Shadow of the Erdtree, is that this DLC is massive. This is pretty much the size of a full game again. It's not the size of Elden Ring itself, because Elden Ring was already a massive packed game for just $70 US. It's probably one of the best games I can think of that you could have ever bought at launch. And I'm saying at launch, like day one, that wasn't broken, that had a ton of content. The content was special. It was art. It really was. And it was this open world, this huge area, but it wasn't bereft of life. I think a big problem right now is that we see all these games that force themselves to be open world, but they don't pack the world with interesting things. Elden Ring did that. And what's so cool about Shadow of the Erdtree is that it's looking to do the exact same thing and add a parallel map to the lands between. Essentially, this is an area you can go to. It's a land of shadow, and Hidetaka Miyazaki actually broke a lot of this down talking to IGN, and I thought it was very interesting. I wanted to take a look at a couple of the quotes he said and kind of talk about why this is such a big deal that this is happening. I'm going to structure this video in a way where even if the DLC is already out, it is still applicable, because this isn't meant to just be a hype video for something upcoming. It's meant to be a celebration of them actually putting work into this game and making it something really cool for people like you and me to enjoy, making it something that's actually worth our money, worth our time, and doesn't treat us like a slot machine. I think that that's something that really should be celebrated. Before I read a couple of these quotes and hop a little more into the point of the video, if you enjoyed today's video and you want to leave a like, leave a comment letting me know what you think, any suggestions for content, RPGs you want me to look at, or RPG adjacent games, even subscribing, those things help the channel out a lot. I'm hoping to eventually get this channel monetized, get it kind of in the YouTube recommended system and grow over time. I appreciate your help with that, and I appreciate all the new people and all the kind words actually from the Stellar Blade video. I know a lot of you are here from that. It means a lot to me, so thank you very much. I'm actually genuinely very appreciative of that. Shadow of the Erdtree is essentially taking place in a brand new land, and Hidetaka Miyazaki described it as a brand new map separate from the lands between. It is a land that is overshadowed by the particular Shadow of the Erdtree, as opposed to the Erdtree in the lands between, and it takes place again on an entirely separate, physically separate map. So it will involve a warp of sorts to get there. And by the way, this is kind of similar to how the Elder Scrolls at least used to handle its huge DLCs. remains to be seen if 6 will do the same, but what the Elder Scrolls used to do was essentially have you discover a new land. Maybe it was, a land in Oblivion where you'd go and you'd run into Sheogorath and you'd have an entire story, or maybe it was a land in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim where you'd go and you'd fight a previous Dragonborn, and it would be a DLC with like 30 hours of content. Unfortunately, that's not something we see a lot of right now. We don't see a lot of huge DLCs where they are packed with content and they don't charge you, out the backside for it. But this is already something that's shaping up to be pretty much the size of a full game in a lot of ways. They actually broke down the size of what's going on here as well. And when they asked Miyazaki basically what this land would be like, he said that if you think in terms of scale or size, it's probably comparable, if not larger, than the area of Limgrave from the base game, which if you have played Elden Ring, Limgrave is massive. If you haven't, it's massive. And it's not just, by the way, an on-the-ground map. Something that was so cool about Elden Ring was that there were dungeons and caves, there were entire cave systems to go into, hidden paths, there were dungeons underground where you could go through an entire area. Now that is actually coming back. That wasn't just something in the base game. This is not just them giving you a flatlands with a handful of bosses on it, some story elements and items, and then you're done. There is going to be underground dungeons and everything in this back again. Miyazaki actually confirmed this and said that players can expect a similar experience to what they had with the base game. It's going to be structured in a similar way with open field maps, with large scale legacy dungeons, and small to medium scale legacies as well. And they're hoping that players will enjoy the sense of scale and sense of adventure throughout the structure of it. I think it's telling, by the way, that they did take 2 years to actually craft this. This isn't like an in-game shop where they pump out a costume here and there and say, well, $10. This is something where they put in tons of new sets of armor. They've said that they've put in all kinds of new NPCs that you will interact with and have quest lines with that you'll talk to, and you'll make friends or enemies out of these characters. There are all these new bosses as well, and so many different hidden things to find. And it does tie directly into the lore and mythos of already existing characters in Elden Ring. The point of this is actually to expand on the story of characters that we didn't get to see a lot of or enough of in Elden Ring. For example, the character Mikola, which I could get into a whole lore thing, but I don't think it would benefit the video. Essentially, it's a very big character in the mythos of Elden Ring that we only get a small glimpse of and some story tidbits and references to the past of. We don't actually get to really see what's going on with that character much. So this is kind of designed to expand those story elements and actually dive into something players have been wondering, players have been wanting to see. Now, not every mystery needs to be discovered, not every rock needs to be overturned in a game like Elden Ring or in any game. It's okay to leave some things open-ended, but there were a lot of things that got cut, unfortunately, in Elden Ring, and there were a lot of story ideas that it was very clear that they wanted to do more with, but the game was already so huge and so packed that I would argue probably adding to it would have been overreaching. This matters so much to me, and I think it matters so much to a lot of people because they took their time on it, taking a few years to actually add content. Something I've noticed with a lot of games now, and it's not just Western ones, but one of the newest ones I can think of was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, is that a lot of times when games are coming out, they already have pre-order DLC content like immediately, and it's something substantial like a story pack or a very big cosmetic pack or something like that. And that game actually teased its DLC before it even launched. It was already teasing, hey, we've got a DLC trailer for the first DLC story thing. And I think players really appreciate this approach from Elden Ring, this approach from Hidetaka Miyazaki, and how much care and craft they put into worlds like this in the From Software titles, because they appreciate someone taking their time to craft content that is worth the money that they pay. At the end of the day, do I consider a lot of video game works art? I do. I know it's a debate, but I do. But that said, I think a lot of it is far too monetized, far too nickeled and dimed, and designed around just taking from you instead of giving anything to you. I've noticed that over time, the games industry as a whole has moved more and more towards the idea of how little can we give players and how much can we charge them for how little we give them. There's even cases where huge companies have hired psychologists and basically people who specialize in the study of the mind to see, well, how can we make our game kind of addictive? Or how can we make our game, loot boxes trigger dopamine centers? How can we do this? But what's so special about Miyazaki and his team and From Software in general is that's not their goal. Their goal is not to make their game something that you ruin your life with something that you pour your whole life savings into. Their goal is to make their game something good. Their goal is to make their game something people will go back to, like Dark Souls 1, like the original Kingdom Hearts games even. I would argue they're even now pretty much like that, but you know what I mean, like things that people will be nostalgic for in the future and they will go back to because it's a complete experience. Personally, I'm sure I will do a is it worth buying of some kind when this comes out, but looking at it right now from where we're at and even looking at it in the future just from a conceptual standpoint, if you're watching this after it's launched, this matters so much because I think people need more of this. People need to feel like they are getting their money's worth, getting their time's worth, they are being respected, they have an active input in what's being made because, groups like From Software and especially Hidetaka Miyazaki do listen to fan feedback. They do listen to things that people loved. And he even went on to say that as well. He went on to say that, they knew that, that people were fighting against obviously Malenia, and they knew that kind of the background to that boss, like how people were very aware of that boss, and they said that there are actually bosses tuned in a similar way to that boss in this DLC as well, which is very clearly kind of a response to how players responded to the base game, which I think is really cool. And they also did say as well that the door is not shut on potentially seeing more things. He said that they don't want to say that this is the end of the Elden Ring saga for now. I think we said a similar thing at the end of Dark Souls 3. We didn't want to flatten those possibilities or put a pin in them just at that time, and it's a similar story with Elden Ring. We don't want to discourage the possibilities for that. There might be more ideas in the future. We don't have any current plans to make a second DLC or a sequel, but we definitely don't want to snuff out that possibility. We think that there could very well be something in the future. And by the way, I think something that's really cool about that is the transparency. It's something we don't see enough of in the entertainment industry. Everything's a secret. Everything's like, oh, well, you'll have to wait and see. Why are you not grateful for the product? Why are you not grateful? And that's never been the mindset of From Software. It's never been, why are you not grateful for the thing we made you, you ungrateful prick? It's, we're grateful that you care so much about what we're making. We're grateful that you are all so passionate about this world that we've crafted, about these characters we've made, about this story, about this combat, about this gameplay. We are grateful that you, the players, are enjoying that. And I think both matter. It matters that these creators are able to make their vision. It matters that these creators are able to create the world that they want. Things like Stellar Blade, my opinion on that, are not changing. It's also, I think, really important to take the player into account and actually value those players, not tell them all people like you, X person, we don't want you in the fandom. All people like X person, we don't want you here. This isn't for you. This wasn't made for you. That is never the response or the attitude of From Software. And I think it's really cool. And I think this is something that the entertainment industry and the world needs more of, is art that unifies people and brings them together for something really fun, really cool, and that isn't designed to take from you, but is instead designed to give back to you and reward you for loving their thing. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I do appreciate you very much. This channel is growing very quickly. Also, if you are interested, I actually have a Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays, where I play through games. I actually played through the Demon's Souls remake. I played through Elden Ring actually for the first time ever. My first playthrough is on that channel as well. I will warn you if you watch it. At first I was very unsure of what to make of the game. It was so different from Dark Souls that parts of me wanted to reject it, parts of me wanted to embrace it. But over time, it's become one of my favorite video games of all time. I adore it. I adore what it stands for. I adore what they do at From Software. So if you're interested in checking out that channel, link is in the description down below. We have a Patreon as well and other channels as well down there, and a fun Discord you can join. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you whether you came from this video, Stellar Blade, or my other channels. Thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, everybody, stay shui.